still working at Blue Point?
Correct. Yeah.
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 How do you like it there? How's that
I
going?
love it, dude.
Yeah.
It's a really fun team. A lot of good guys. In Austin too, if I remember correctly, you're in Austin, right? So,
Well, you're in Austin too, right?
uh, the studio is. I'm working remote from Denver, but
Oh,
Blue
Denver.
Point
Nice.
is located in Austin. But yeah, it's great, man. Fun project, a lot of fun people, and yeah, really, really cool spot.
How long you been there?
I started at Blue Point fairly recently. I think, what was it now? I think 7 or 8 months ago, something like
Oh
that.
yeah.
Yeah, so relatively recently, and they were kind of like hiring up, getting ready, working on a new project. So
Yeah, yeah.
got to get in right at the start, which is pretty fun. Getting in there early and getting to be a part of the whole thing.
Right, right, right. Have you come down to Austin?
Not yet, man. I've been meaning to. So, and I will soon. We'll have to grab a drink or something.
Oh
But
yeah. Grab some
I
tacos and
think the
stuff.
last. Yeah, dude, you're gonna have to show me around. Give me the food tour of Austin. But yeah, not yet. I've actually never been to Austin before. I've been to Houston and Dallas, but
Oh, okay.
yeah, I mean, I've heard Austin's awesome, so
Yeah,
looking forward to
yeah,
it.
yeah. It's nice. I mean, we've been we've moved 3 times in the 6 year of being here,
Hmm.
and we move further away from the city more and more. But there's a lot to do and great food.
Yeah.
And the great thing is like all the adjacent towns like Round Rock, Hoodoo, all the
Hmm.
towns around there are great too. So if you live there, there's a bunch of stuff that you can do. You don't have to go to like the actual city.
Yeah.
Um, and but we're probably like about half an hour from downtown, which is not that bad of a drive either.
Yeah, not bad at all.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I have heard. I guess depending on where you live in Texas, it can be a lot of driving to get
Oh yeah.
around.
I mean, yeah, yeah. You could drive for 8 hours and you're still in Texas.
Oh
So,
yeah, I mean it's huge.
so it's a bit crazy. Yeah, we're actually planning to go to this huge national federal park called Big Bend, which is at the border of
Oh yeah, yeah.
Mexico,
Hmm.
and I think it's like a 9 hour drive from where we are at, and we're not even like we're in the middle of Texas, and that thing is like on the corner on the southwest corner. So if like
Yeah,
even that is like 8 hours a night, which is ridiculous. Um,
yeah, it's crazy, dude. Because for me, I mean, what 8 hours? I could be damn near in California. Right? So,
yeah, 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 yeah,
that's
exactly.
wild, dude.
Well, I mean, I come from an island, and you could literally go
Yeah,
around
yeah.
the island in like 3-4 hours, like the whole
Uh,
thing, which is like, and to us that's like a lot. Like
yeah,
I wouldn't go to the other side of the island or anything like that in like a day. But here in Texas, it's just like, oh yeah, 8 hours is
yeah.
fine. Same day, come back, um, which is a bit crazy. Um, so
Yeah,
you
it's
haven't
nuts,
been to
dude.
Austin yet, and not even for like
No,
the interview or anything.
no, everything was it's like that post-COVID world, dude. Everything was virtual, um, which is good and bad. I kind of like it, but then you miss out on a lot of the interpersonal stuff that comes with
Yeah,
like
yeah,
just working
yeah,
or with the team in a studio. Which is good and bad. It's nice to work from home. You roll out of bed, take a quick shower. You don't have a
yeah.
commute, and it's hard to beat. So
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
liking it so far. We'll see if I'm a hermit in like 5 years hiding in my office. Like maybe not so much, but
And
um,
what were you
are,
before Blue Point?
I was freelancing.
Oh,
So I was working. I did a little bit of work on some live action film directly before going to Blue Point. Before that, it was just games. So branched out a little bit, and then yeah, man. Majority of the stuff I've worked on have been games, so I'm
yeah. How do
I've
you
been
compare
enjoying it a lot.
how do you compare the both, like both of those? Because I've done both as well, and it's like a whole
Yeah.
completely different thing.
Yeah. So I'm curious what you think too, but
Yeah.
in my experience, so when I was working on live action, it was a lot of like just keyframe heavy stuff.
Right.
So really quick turnaround.
How quick?
I'd say like pretty high pressure. I mean, like a day,
Yeah.
pretty much. Like turn a piece around in a day, get notes, and then address the notes the next day, and you're done. So really fast turnaround, especially compared to some of the games I've worked on, but definitely higher pressure. I feel like it can be, I don't know, a bit more interesting just because you're constantly going.
Mm-hmm.
At least in my experience on games, you're spending a fair bit more time fleshing a certain thing out, developing a certain area or whatever it is. So yeah, I think there's the fast pace is kind of like the difference that I saw the most. But yeah, I'm curious what you think too.
Yeah, it is definitely that. I have a couple directors, and I literally just got a email from another. She's more of a set dressing designer.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And I have a certain people that they always call me whenever they need something. And it's usually like that. Like they call me on a Wednesday and they need it by Thursday or Friday. Like
Yeah.
that's it. But one of the things that I always talk, especially like when I talk to students, is like that's like one of those things where especially if you have a full time and then this gig comes out, and you sometimes look at it and you're like, oh man, I gotta work like 12, 14 hours this day for the next 2-3 days to get this done. But it's I always, and a lot of people are sort of like scared of that. They don't want to go through the trouble. But if you're freelancing, like,
Yeah.
that's like one of those sacrifices, quote unquote. Because I mean, it's not even a sacrifice. I see it more as an investing thing, because that always pays dividends later on, because they always know
Totally.
that they can count on you to get that job delivered.
Yeah.
But I learned the most when I worked on my first, was it a movie? Yeah, it was a movie. It wasn't a series. It was a movie with Keanu Reeves called Replicas. It's like a small movie, small budget movie. But the crazy thing was, when I was like, when I saw this, I was like, yeah, this is definitely different from games. It was like,
Yeah.
I did a design for a pod where they were gonna put like a human in there and like grow the human and stuff. And I did this crazy design thing, and I probably did, throughout the whole production, I probably did like 50 revisions of that one prop, because
Yeah.
I designed it, but then throughout the process they needed the stuff to actually work in real life, because it was for a movie, so
Yeah.
they were actually gonna like build it. And so like that took like forever. And then it came when they started constructing it, we needed to change it because they were gonna put like water and stuff. So we needed to take in consideration how thick the frames were going to be to hold the water and the weight of the person so it doesn't explode, and like all those things that we don't have to think about in games.
Yeah.
In games you just make it cool and that's it.
Yeah.
But we had to, I had to do so many iterations for, especially for props that they were gonna like get built, because they needed to work in real life. And that was like a crazy thing that I went to. But I love it because I got to walk the actual sets that they build based on my concepts, and that's like a whole thing, like you're actually there, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I think that that like functional aspect of it is definitely way more intense, because like you said, they're building it. In games they're building it in 3D, and you can kind of
it doesn't matter how it works, just make it work.
Yeah exactly. So but that is cool. I've never seen like a physical like prop or set of like based off any of my concepts, but I've talked to a lot of people who like did the same thing as that they do like a walkthrough of the set that they concepted, and it sounds like a pretty like a fulfilling experience.
Yeah.
And I get to check everything out. Yeah, that's cool, man. It's really cool.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. We actually like those specifically those pots were very big because they needed to fit like a regular person in there. They
Yeah.
had like buttons and stuff and like a screen and like all that stuff. And then when you see it in the movie, you're like, "Ooh, that's pretty cool." I actually saw that, um, but as we were talking earlier, we and just for the audience, we met through brainstorm, because you were taking one of the classes that I was giving, and like seeing your progress from that was like maybe like 2 years ago or something like that to now has been like crazy. Because I mean, were you working in the industry when you took my class, or
Yeah, I was taking like just small jobs here and there,
yeah, like freelance
nothing.
stuff?
Yeah. So freelancing kind of, I guess more part-time. I was still
Really?
working pretty hard on actual studying. And yeah. So sort of,
Okay.
I
Yeah, yeah,
guess is
yeah,
the
yeah,
answer.
yeah. Yeah, because it's
Yeah.
never. I mean, I think it's rare when you just get out of. Because all right, so tell us a little bit about like during that sort of period of time. Because for example, when I first started, it was just like that. Where it was like you will get jobs sporadically. You'll get like a couple
Yeah.
jobs here and there, and like how did you or how well were you filling those gaps in terms of were you working other jobs that were non-art related or
No, so actually I switched careers from finance. So I
really?
started so I studied business. I studied corporate finance in school. Um,
I'm
and
studying
then
that too.
switched over to Are you really?
Yeah,
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 dude. So we'll have to chat about that a bit.
yeah, yeah,
It's been a minute for me. You probably are much more knowledgeable, but um, yeah. So I mean, I had like savings, and I wasn't working at all when I was studying outside of like actual art freelance. So I
yeah.
wasn't doing any non-art related work when I was kind of making that transition. Um, and I think that was definitely beneficial. I mean, being able to put my whole focus into one
Yeah.
thing. I do like I've talked with quite a few people who don't really have that luxury,
Hmm.
and you have to, work whatever part time, and
Yeah.
then art becomes kind of your passion pursuit, on the side. I think that can get pretty stressful pretty quickly,
Yeah.
depending on the situation. So I was pretty lucky. And had a pretty decent situation going into it.
Nice. And were you
Yeah,
were you just studying finance, or you actually got to work?
yeah. So I studied for 4 years. I went to school for finance, and then I worked at in like corporate and institutional banking, which is
Yeah.
pretty boring. But
What was the normal day? What was the normal day in there?
oh man, I don't even know. So I
I
guess
don't want to take you back to
there
the to the bad days and boring days, but just for the sake
there
of the
were
audience.
it kind of rotated. So like I guess a day in the life, I think I started at like 8. I worked like 8 to 5. Um, and I would wake up, I would like go through all my emails, check everything, and then um, I don't even remember what the system we had was called, but we had this like it's like a program that just essentially organized everything we had going on.
Yeah.
So I'd go into that and just start whittling away at what I had to do. Um, and yeah, man, it almost is like a bit of a bit of a blur. If you can't tell, I didn't enjoy it that much.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
it
Well,
it was
were
good though.
you
I mean,
interested?
I
Like,
met
were you interested in like art during that time? Like, were you thinking about, oh, I want to be a concept artist during that time?
yeah. So I mean, I've been interested in art my pretty much my whole life.
Oh yeah.
I've always kind of just been like sketch. It's been more of a hobby though, right? Like sketching, kind of drawing on the side. And I guess I don't know exactly when it was that I found out about concept art. I think I just saw like an art book or something. And I was like, that's kind of cool. You can do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it was kind of like from that moment, it just kind of like, that was what I wanted to do. And that's kind of all I was really thinking about at the time. And so, um, kind of, I talked to my girlfriend about this a lot. I kind of like dove in head first, not really thinking very clearly, is like, should I quit my job and do this, or maybe be a little
Yeah.
more conservative in my approach. But it worked out in the end, so here we are. But
That's cool.
yeah, I mean, it's cool looking back though, because I met so many smart people, really smart people, and really motivated people, and it's just a completely different industry.
Yeah.
So it's cool to kind of have a little bit of experience in both. It's about as uncreative as you could possibly get. So
I bet.
I'm on like both extremes now. Yeah.
Were you always good at math?
No, dude. Honestly, pretty bad. I would say. I kind of had to muscle my way through it, and yeah, I don't know, man. It was definitely not my calling. I will say that.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah. I see. On my case, like I always loved math. I like
Yeah.
spreadsheets with the maths and all that stuff. Like I love doing all that stuff. But man, that's crazy. I thought it was gonna be like I don't know if you know Anthony Jones. He used to be a plumber, and he was like, "Oh no, I don't like this. I'm gonna be a concept artist, just out of the blue type thing." And it's like, "Oh, I think I can do this," and he just went and did it.
I mean, it's crazy how many stories you hear like that though, because it's fairly unique in the fact that you don't need any formal education, right? It's completely skill based. So I feel like more often than not, you meet people with kind of like funny stories about, I was doing, God knows what. And then I just decided one day this is what I'm going to do. So
yeah, especially nowadays, because I mean, there's so much education out there, accessible.
Oh yeah.
Which is kind of crazy. So when you started, do you have like so what was your goal like at the beginning, besides just getting a job in the industry? Like you had like specific companies that you wanted to work with, or?
No. So I know, so that's, I think, the smart way to do it, right? And the way you're often kind of recommended to do it when you're studying is, pick a few studios and then make work that they would want, you can kind of target your portfolio and kind of up your chances. The approach I took, which luckily worked out, I think it's a bit riskier, but I kind of just did stuff I liked, was interested in, and then was lucky enough to, when people were working on a project that was related, or, somehow, whatever I was doing kind of fit their project, they would reach out and found work that way, which definitely, a lot more riding on luck that A, someone's going to even see your work, and B, that whatever they're doing kind of falls in line with what you're doing. So my recommendation would probably be to not do that.
I mean, but probably the work that you were interested in was pretty, I don't want to say commercialized, but that a lot of people or companies were doing that sort of similar job. It's not like you have some crazy unique style that, it was like hard to fit.
Stylistically, I think, I mean, like you said, it's not like really out there at all. It's more so I just didn't pick like, I want to work at Naughty Dog, so I'm going to do, post-apocalyptic everything, or like Uncharted everything, and try to get in there. Which I think is probably a good strategy, more often than not. But I mean, I'm sure can kind of, or will probably agree with this, but I feel like there's not really one way to get in. Everyone kind of has their own thing that they did, so it's hard to say like do this or do that. It's kind of, do your thing, and eventually people will like what you're doing.
It's crazy how many times or how many ways you can get jobs, especially if you're a freelancer. It's crazy. So since you come from finance, I'm gonna ask you, I give you $1,000 right now. What do you do with it?
Right now? Oh man. That's a good question, dude, because I should say like investments or something, you know, I'm going to grow that $1,000, but I just broke a pair of headphones. So I'd probably buy a new pair of headphones. Um, that's a good question though. I mean, I think the honest answer is I probably would throw it in the market because that's typically what I do.
Yeah.
In terms of like in my finances, I keep like, I mean, I don't want to go down like a crazy financial rabbit hole, but I like to keep some cash on hand, you know, like an emergency fund, and then
Yep.
spending money. And then pretty much everything else I do usually throw into investments. Nothing like crazy because I'm not really someone who pays attention to like the market and stocks. So I put money in like an index fund or something safe. And then
So
I
what are
can
you
kind of
using? Are
just
you
forget about it.
using you have so are you using the 401k from your job if you have one, or like a Roth IRA type thing?
Yeah, so I have a 401k from Sony, which I just like make a contribution to it every month. It's like 5 or 10%. And I mean, I never look at that. And then
That's free
any
money.
like spare cash, yeah, it's free money. And then besides that, I have like my own like portfolios, which I invest in spare cash in. But
Yeah.
yeah, 401k is always a good idea.
If they match,
good
it's
to
always
start
good.
saving.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So you'll put in one of your investments, most likely.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not like, I wouldn't call myself like an investor. I don't spend a ton of time like researching and, you know, really following any certain stocks. I'll just put it, like I said, in an index fund or something that follows the market and is, you know, typically fairly safe and grows. And
yeah.
sometimes I do get more interested and I'm like, I'm going to get really into it. I'm going to like day trade. I'm going to make a ton of money.
Hell no.
You're quickly reminded that there's a reason why that's more like gambling.
That's definitely, that's gambling for sure.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I was talking to a couple of days ago with Alpai F. He's a fine artist in Instagram, and he has like a huge YouTube following. And he's like super skilled, like super good painter. He paints with oils and stuff. And I asked him that same question. He goes like, "I'm gonna get a Godzilla statue." We just laughing because he didn't have to think about it too much.
Yeah.
He's like, "I'm just gonna get a Godzilla statue." We're just laughing about it because we're talking about the movie.
That's
too,
funny
and all that stuff. But so the you know, at this because I mean you're 25, you said.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the age that I started pursuing concept art. Sort of somewhere around there. At your like at the spot that you're out, you know, you've been working for around 2 years and all that stuff. Like, how do you define in your mind what success is like for you? Like, what does that look like?
For me,
because I know that changes.
Success, yeah, is what I was going to say. It's fairly subjective, and I think it evolves quite a bit, depending on where you are and you know what you're doing. I think originally, and the two big ones that always come to mind, you know, that everyone talks about is like money and prestige. It's like you want to get paid, you want to buy things, and you know it's nice to be recognized for what you're doing. So I think that's like where I started, obviously, because I'm like, I want to get a job and I want to work on something that's cool that like I enjoy. And then I think after like really entering the industry is like, well, it started to shift a little bit. And I feel like I'm still kind of in the middle of that shift, but I want to start branching out and, you know, generating more passive income streams and just different income streams because, like this industry has so much opportunity for that kind of stuff. And, you know, you're a prime example of someone who kind of does a lot of everything. You know, you have the 3D models, you have the tutorials, you have the YouTube, and there's just a lot of opportunity outside of just like a full-time job, which I think is one of the really cool things about, you know, what we do is you can almost like custom tailor your way of making money in this
Mm-hmm.
industry. You can just go full freelance. You can go like full on selling tutorials. I mean, I know people who make so much money just off tutorials they made like 10 years ago. So
And that never worked on the
um,
industry.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's funny, and it's cool to have all those different opportunities. So I think that's kind of where I'm shifting is um, trying to branch out a little bit more from just freelance and full-time stuff, and just see, kind of experiment and see what I like and what I want to pursue further. Something I started actually really recently was doing one-on-one mentorships with people who had kind of reached out. So that's something that I'm focusing on right now, and has been pretty rewarding. It's fun too,
Yeah.
and it's challenging too because it forces you to actually think.
Oh yeah.
Because a lot of the times, like especially when I'm just like painting something or rendering it, I'm like brain off, dude, listening to music, and so to have to actually explain what's going through your mind is it's tough, and so that's been fun as well. Yeah, I think that super long-winded answer to your question, but I think success for me right now is just kind of branching out a little bit more and seeing
Figuring that out.
what I actually figuring out what else I want to do with my free time, and what I really enjoy. So
yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that always evolves, because for sure it wasn't the same way 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago for me. So it's a bit organic, like a living
oh
thing.
yeah, and it's nice too because it keeps it interesting.
Yeah.
You're not stuck in like a rut of doing the exact same thing every day. It's really fluid.
Well, if you don't have you're gonna be just sort of like the same. You're not gonna change, and you're gonna do or grow or anything like that. So
Yeah,
I think it's a dangerous thing to not have it that way, because you could just stay the same for a pretty long, very long time, and the industry could just pass you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, that's definitely, like, I feel like, not an unjustified fear. I mean, people kind of at all times are just going 100 miles an hour, like working on new things, discovering new ways of doing stuff. And so you definitely feel a pressure to keep up a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I'm curious what you think about that though, too, because you've dabbled in a lot of, I guess, like really everything, right? You've taught, you've kind of made your own kind of tutorials, Gumroad type stuff. I think you saw on ArtStation, right? And then also the 3D stuff too.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years since I sort of tried to get other income streams, just because the same reasons that you mentioned. In this industry, you can, especially I mean, you don't even have to, like I say, you don't even have to have like this crazy experience in the industry to be successful in that, because there's so many people that I've seen that they haven't worked for 3 clients or 2 clients, and they have a huge following, and they're selling stuff and stuff like that. I mean, the work is good. So working in the industry is not really an ingredient necessity for that particular thing. But now it's crazy, because now, I mean, I like all the stuff that I'm doing, so I'm focusing on how to grow those things. But I'm actually now looking outside of art. How can I do that? Just because, like, and I was talking about this with Alpai, that, and he thinks the same way, is that I think when I'm 60, hopefully I'm wrong, but we'll see. When I'm 60, when I'm 50 or something, I probably won't even be in the art industry. I'll probably be doing something else, just because I'm a guy that, I like a couple of things different outside of art, because art for me is not, I don't have any emotional attachments to art. Like, if something crazy happens in the world where art is like completely obsolete, like, I won't be doing art for fun. Like I'd rather do something else, all the things.
Totally.
So I've been trying to figure out what those things are going to be outside of the art industry. But
that's I was just gonna say, I think that's why we see, like, a lot of the like real industry veterans you see are rarely still in like a actual art heavy role. You know, they get
Yeah.
into like production or direction
Yeah.
or whatever,
Yeah.
if they stay in the industry at all. So I think,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's probably something that a lot of people kind of have
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah, I'm actually going to talk to. It's funny you mentioned that because I'm going to talk to a production designer. I think in 2 days, but he has his journey in the art industry is very similar to what I want to do if I keep in the same industry, because he was a concept
Yeah.
artist, visual development artist, art director, and now
Mm-hmm.
he's a production designer. So I can't wait to talk to him and pick his brain and see what he did and all that
Yeah.
stuff. So because I think that's the path that I sort of want to take. Sort of more
It's,
managing and
yeah,
stuff.
it's like, it's such like a natural progression too, because
Yeah.
like in concept art, you dip your toes into a lot of stuff outside of just, you know, concept. And so I feel like you get a lot of pretty broad experience, especially like working in a studio. You kind of really get to know how everything works.
Yeah, but I think most artists will have a hard time with that because like I think most artists they want to do the art.
Yeah.
So like it's gonna be hard for a lot of artists to not do the art and do more of the managing stuff because they want to keep doing the art.
Yeah, the business side of things.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and so I think most artists they just rather stay in that role because they get to do the art, instead of you know moving up. But
Yeah,
but
I think that's true.
Yeah.
I think for me, I'm not attached to like commercial art. You know, like
Oh,
what I
okay.
do professionally, I'm
Yeah.
not. That's not like what I like. I mean, like the art I really enjoy is like my personal work.
Do you do it
and
for fun or you do it more for like growing and get better at?
a bit of both. I think it used to be pretty much just to like develop skills, and recently it's like I I almost don't want to like work at art after I finish working.
Yeah.
I just kind of do a bunch of junk that's like fun. It's and that's kind of the stuff I do now, which is it's just kind of like messing around and having a good time, not really focusing on anything in particular.
Right. So do you have other things that what I call that feed your soul?
Yeah, I mean, a fair few things. It kind of depends. I'm like one of those people who bounces around from interest to interest, a little bit ADHD, but like living in Colorado, you know, we have the mountains here, which has just so much. I think we talked about this actually before, like the ranches, which I think you've been to like some of the ranches here, right? Or maybe it was Utah.
No, yeah, I was there last year.
Yeah. So I mean, like that kind of stuff is just awesome, you know. And as it's like stuff outside of art, it's like being in a painting half the time when you go and like for what was that ranch, CYZU, for example. It's like, dude, everywhere you go there is like it's insane. And you like ride horses around, and so we got a lot of that kind of stuff, hiking, skiing. There was a time where I was really into photography just because of it's like a lot of opportunity for that. And then more recently, I've been getting into cooking.
Yeah,
I'm terrible at. Yeah.
Nice. What kind? What you making?
So I'm half Chinese. My mom is from Hong Kong.
Really?
So I've been making a lot of her family recipes, or
that's cool.
Attempting to. And so yeah, that's like another thing that I'm struggling to get better at. But
that's a good skill to have.
Hey man, it is. I mean, and especially when it turns out well, you know, like wow, this would be like $80 in a restaurant. I just made it for like 20. So
it's funny that you say that because I recently, a couple months, started barbecuing because I never barbecued before. Like it wasn't like a thing from where I come from. But because we got a house and I bought a barbecue and stuff like that. And so like now I use it like every single day. Like it's like crazy. And so we've been actually, to save money, we've been actually, because we have like specific places that we go to for specific food. So we have a place that we go just for the burgers. We have a place just for the
Sure,
pizzas or
sure.
for the tacos and stuff like
Hmm.
that. And so we were like, if we manage to make the food that looks that tastes better than the places that we're going to, we're gonna save a bunch of money. So we bought a barbecue, and we've been doing a bunch of stuff, and like now we don't go to these places as much as we used to, and
Yeah.
because we're always cooking. But
It is interesting too, because like it's the same as art, but like once you start to learn
oh yeah,
how to cook, it like demystifies it, right?
yeah,
It's not you can kind of figure out how like certain things are done. It's not just like,
yeah.
wow, that's incredible. So yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because I've had kind of the same experience. It's like getting better at it, and it's like I'm eating out less, I'm saving more money, and I'm eating better.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
hard to eat. um,
That's funny. Oh man, I'm getting hungry. Um,
Me too,
um, so I got two more questions. One
Sure.
is what do you think it has been for you at your stage has been the biggest challenge so far?
The biggest challenge. I wouldn't say this is necessarily at the stage I'm at right now, but the biggest challenge I've had was, I think, kind of coming out of the more student phase and actually entering like full time entering
Yeah,
the industry and working, because and I know a lot of people do this, and it's kind of like you have this grind mindset when you're studying, and it's like all you do, you like
yeah.
you give up like everything outside of just doing art all day, and it's kind of like it's bad for you really. And so when
Well,
that's well, it's good for your development as an artist, but once that suddenly ends, you're like, wow, I only work 8 hours a day now, like what do I do? And it was almost more stressful for me because I felt like there was this big thing missing, and at the same time, it was like I hadn't really. I was like used to just doing art all the time, and to like kind of break out of that habit was kind of difficult for me, and to get back to like just regular life, which thankfully I've done. it's
yeah,
it's that was pretty tough, I think. And, I was lucky enough. I didn't really have, I think for a lot of people, it's probably just like finding the first job, and really, that's kind of a tough period. And I was lucky enough to never really have to look super hard. And so in that aspect, I think, like I said, I've been pretty fortunate. And so it was just kind of like a weird, almost like shock coming out and being like, so I have to be like a normal person again. I can't be this weird art hermit who just draws and paints all day in my room. Let's see what kind of imagery that's putting in everyone's mind of, the goblin person hunched over the desk. Yeah, that was tough. What about for you? Was it?
There's been a few, but I think the main one has been leaving my family. So I come from Puerto Rico, and I grew up with a full family. It was a very family oriented family type thing. We always
Yeah.
had Sunday lunch or dinner, and we always drank coffee at night and that sort of thing. But it was like one of those things that I knew early that I knew that was gonna be a sacrifice, because I wasn't gonna stay. I didn't want to stay in Puerto Rico because there's no industry, and it's just harder to get jobs and stuff like that. I managed to do it for like 5 years, but in Puerto Rico, you lose power constantly. There's bad reception, and like it just wasn't the ideal ingredients to flourish in this particular industry. So when we left, and and also part of it, which, because I mean my wife had to also leave, and it was like her first time leaving the island. It was my second time for me, so I was sort of like used to it. So for her it was even harder, because she was like 30 31, never left the island, never left her parents. She just get married to me, and we sort of left, and so it was even harder for her. So sort of like a combined sacrifice thing. But the only thing I can do is just make it worth it, you know. So
Yeah. And I didn't ask this earlier, but what was it? What did you kind of decide, I guess, like on concept art as,
it
what
was in
was
my
that like
so
for you?
I study animation, but
Mm,
I never did, because I never did art when I was a kid, or I was never
yeah.
interested in art in particular. I did animation. I studied animation just because I like anime, um, and like, but I got into school and it was like doing anatomy drawings and like pencil drawings. I didn't know what a 2B pencil was, or like or like all these, and it was just like those 4 years. Like I did the classes and stuff, but I did some 3D
Sure. Yeah.
for that, but um during that time I was like, oh man, I want to be like, I like concept art because I always like the books of art of whatever game. um
Yeah.
and I remember looking at one of the first books that I looked at. I was like, oh man, I would love to do this. Was the art book of Darksiders, and this thing
Oh,
was like
yeah.
this thick, and he had like all the sketches and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, this looks pretty cool, type thing. But I never pursued it for a little while, and I was in
Yeah.
Florida back then. And then I moved to California. I spent like a whole year there, and then I moved back to Puerto Rico. That's when I got back, and probably like a year after that, was like, well, during that time, I was like, because I was sort of like starting from zero, like I had nothing,
Yeah.
no job, no nothing, and I started practicing on that. But I was working, I work in the fitness industry. I was a personal trainer. I had my own gym. I work in restaurants, selling supplements, all that stuff while I was
Kind
like,
of bouncing around.
yeah, while I was practicing my art. And then I just started getting like freelance here and there, sort of like, and then sort of like flourish from that.
Yeah.
But
It's funny. It's funny how often you hear that. It's like you ask someone how they, I guess, discovered concept art. I saw this one sketch this one time just randomly, and then I decided that's what my life was going to be.
yeah.
It's funny.
Yeah. Well, I can actually pinpoint it. Like I always collected like art of books, like the games that I would like. Every time there was like a new game, like a new Halo game or something like that, I would always get the book. But
yeah,
before that, I remember I visited Puerto Rico, and I went to a shirt that wasn't my childhood shirt. It was like a different shirt from my friend and stuff. And I went to his office, and he had a drawing, and I still have the drawing here because that was like the first time that I was like that was the first time that I saw a drawing that was like, I want to draw like that. And it was a drawing of a pastor. I think he had a sheep on his shoulder or right next to him, and he's like looking into the distance. There was like these two wolves in the background, and he's just looking at them, type thing, just like sort of like protecting. But the drawing itself was just like a really nice drawing.
it's like caught your eye.
And I remember seeing that drawing. I'm like, wow, like somebody did that with their hand. It was like crazy.
Yeah.
So that was like the first time. But I mean, I was in like my 20s and stuff. Like it wasn't a kid or anything. But
yeah, that's funny, man. I feel like there's always like one thing that really sticks with you.
Yeah.
Like that one piece of art that you were just like, damn, like one day maybe I could do that. So
I should redo that drawing in my own style, just for sakes. That'd be fun.
Yeah, dude, and then pull up the original. That'd be cool.
Right? So I'm gonna share my screen. Hopefully this works.
Sure.
But what I want to do is like, so I have a method of so every time I see an artwork that that I don't understand, quote unquote, or I'm trying to study type thing, I always ask myself like all these technical, straight to the point type questions. Oh, how we do this exactly, and I would sort of like dissect it. So I want to do that with one of your artworks, just so you can give us your, if you remember. I think it's a pretty recent piece, so you probably remember. Let me see. So give me like a quick bio for this particular artwork.
So this actually had a specific prompt.
Oh, good.
This is a piece I did. I'm sure you know him, Kenny Vo.
Yes.
He also teaches still teaches, I think, at Brainstorm.
Mm-hmm.
And he was one of like my really good mentors earlier on, and he had this idea to put together a project of kind of exactly what we're about to do, of doing some art from various different artists based on a certain prompt, and then kind of like breaking down different process and how people go about that. Right. So this was I think the prompt for this was undiscovered lands. And so I finished this one a while back. I just recently got around to publishing it, but yeah, so that's the kind of gist of this image. And
so the buildings, like this part of the buildings, or all the buildings were made in the same way?
So yeah, I can get into technically how this was done. So this was, I think, probably using a process pretty similar to yours in terms of like 3D Code to Blender.
Right.
Recently, I haven't been using as much 3D Code, but at the time I was like super into it. And so everything here was done in 3D Code. All of the actual geometry was created and sculpted in 3D Code. And then some of the finer details, like if you stop here, for example, some of like these tiny little things on here were using the quick tools from Jama and Alexander. I don't know if you're familiar with that at all. It's kind of like for anyone who doesn't know, it's like a Blender plugin suite that's kind of trying to bring over some of that 3D Code workflow to Blender.
Right.
And so that's actually what I'm using mostly these days. But at the time I was kind of combining the two and pushing and pulling and seeing how much I could do in Blender versus how much I could do in 3D Code. I'm kind of someone who, I don't like to jump around between programs too much. It kind of drives me nuts. And so as I've kind of developed my own process and my own techniques, I think that's the main reason I'm kind of, weaning off of 3D Code. And I also use ZBrush for a bit, but trying to get 100% into Blender for most of my actual 3D work. And then I obviously pulled this into Photoshop and did a lot more detailing, photo bashing, value adjustments, and that kind of the typical, 2D stuff.
Now I'm guessing the like the windows and stuff were painted in Photoshop.
Yeah, just like quick brush strokes. That kind of stuff I almost never do in 3D unless it's for client work and they specifically request, like I've had some clients that say they want like essentially the image to be done in 3D, like 98% done in 3D. Anything done in 2D is they just want post, pretty much. And I don't take much of that work because it's for one, I don't enjoy it as much, and for two, I'm not that good at it. You see so much crazy just 3D illustration out there now, and it's like I have no idea how people are able to do that. And so, but that's really the only time I get into the really minute details in 3D if it's professional work and it's specifically asked for. Otherwise, I usually just paint it or photo bash it or whatever.
Yeah. Now all the foliage here, like this here and this is all photo bash.
I think so. You can see it actually if you zoom in on the bridge here. You see those little kind of clumps. They're just like super low poly spheres.
Right.
And so I use that to kind of block in foliage at this distance. Sometimes when I'm closer, I'll use actual 3D assets, 3D trees, but I can't even imagine what this would do to my computer if I scattered a million trees like this. But so I block in that kind of stuff with just like low poly geo, and then touch it up with photo on top.
I mean, is that the same for the terrain in the back here?
Yeah, terrain. Don't actually. So the two main ways I do terrain is either one, if I can find a scan that matches the terrain I'm trying to do, I'll use that because it's just quick and easy. Or I use the Blender Ant Landscapes. It's just like a default plugin that comes with it, and get a really quick shape out of that, and then I sculpt on top. So that's my main way of doing landscapes. And then on top of that, I'll bring in more photo to kind of up the fidelity a little bit. I 3D terrains for me tend to have like that really kind of gooey, waxy look,
Yeah.
And it's not something I really like. There's some people who get away with it and make it look really, really good, but I usually try to touch it up a little bit with photo or just paint. Depending on the fidelity I'm going for. The other way I messed with for a little bit, but I don't use too often, is displacements. So instead of using like the ant landscape as a base, I'll use like a displacement, and then again, kind of sculpt on top of that and customize it to whatever the composition is.
Right. And what about, if you remember, is this like 100 millimeter camera?
Oh, dude.
It doesn't seem like a wide lens.
My guess is 200.
Oh, 200.
Okay. Yeah, that would be my guess. Yeah, I really like long lenses. And it's kind of a shame because we don't get to use them too much professionally, because everyone wants to see like more. They don't want you zooming in like crazy and crunching all the perspective out of it. But for stuff like this, I think it's really cool, and you see a lot of the work I really like out there is kind of, I don't do much creature work, but I love the creature shots where they're shot as if it was like a nature documentary, and you see people like Jama and Gael with their like dinosaurs do it a lot, where it feels like you're watching Nat Geo, but dinosaurs. And so I think it's a really cool look if you can make it work. Yeah, this is a long lens.
Those lenses work really nice for establishing shots like this.
Yeah, it's and just for scale, oftentimes, like when I really want to push scale and put someone against just a massive whatever, I almost always go for the long lens. But that's, I think, probably the most enjoyable thing about 3D for me is I like that it gives you the ability to almost act as a cinematographer, and fly around and experiment. I can't even imagine. Like, I drop in any piece I do, I have probably like 20 cameras set up. I'm trying to find like exactly what I want, like, can you even imagine doing 20 sketches of like the exact same thing, just minor differences, right? It's just crazy. So it's like one of those like kind of flexible things 3D brings you that can be really fun. Especially if you treat it like a photographer. You're like, you built up this cool set and now you get to just have fun and kind of like photograph it.
Let's see for that. I don't want to take too much of your time, but I really appreciate you coming here and having a chat. I know we haven't talking like a little while, but
forever.
Hopefully you come
thanks
to
for having me,
soon.
dude. It's I will. I'll let you know when I'm there. We'll have to meet up and get some tacos or something. But
ride some horses too.
Yeah, dude. It's been so long since I've been on a horse. I'm kind of scared. So that, if I remember correctly, it's just like soreness like you would not believe if you haven't been on a horse in a while.
It's not that bad. I mean, once you ride for a while, you don't get that anymore. But
I mean, I don't ride though, so I can suffer, I guess.
It's a good pain.
Yeah, dude.